Hey, we've got a problem here.
So, what's the plan?
What's your plan?
What are your plans?
What's the plan?
What's the plan?
What's your plan?
What's your plan of action?
Plan.
What's the plan?
So, what is the plan?
Wait, I have a plan.
I have a plan.
I have a plan.
That's the plan.
I have a plan here.
What is your plan?
I got a goddamn plan!
This plan's gonna work. Master Plan, Phase 1, Side A.
I love everything about your plan.
भाई इससे कहते हैं planning.
What's it say?
Well, it says, I love it when a plan comes together.
Hi and welcome to the Young Person's Plan for the Planet program. Today we're going to be talking about why we use the approaches we use in developing the plan for the planet. So a lot of the students have come back and teachers and said, look, this works really well. However, we'd like to understand a bit more about why we approach it this way and how that can apply not only to solving the problems of the planet, but also to other things we're going to do in our future careers. So today we have Max and we have Zoe joining us.
Hey.
From our teams in ACT.
Yep.
Thank you so much. We've got a pretty action-packed program because we're going to be talking to them about how they have conducted the program. So this is really about the program in action, why we go about it the way we do, and how that actually benefits not only what we come up with in terms of solving the problems of the planet, but also how that benefits every student in their careers going forward. So we're going to be asking Max and Zoe a few questions about that, but also we have Dr. Bobby Cerini, who's interviewed a whole lot of the scientists around the world, and she's going to be explaining a little bit about the mind of the scientist. So it's very interesting because today we also start, as always, with an acknowledgement to country and an acknowledgement to 50,000 years of our Australian Indigenous people setting an example not only for our nation but also for the planet in caring for country. So it's important we start with that acknowledgement because we're looking at the history of our country, of caring for country, and we're now looking at bringing together a lot of the technologies of now to continue caring for country. So we're bringing together our history and also our modern way of thinking and technology. So it all comes together in actually caring for country. So it's a pretty exciting program today. Thank you so much, Zoe and Max, for taking time out of your studies. Naholi, I have to mention, is actually doing exams tomorrow, so that's why she's not here, because studies and exams take priority, right?
Yep.
Yep. However, every student is taking time out of their time, because this is all extracurricular, to actually help save the planet. So how have you found it so far, Max? You enjoyed it?
Definitely. I mean, last year was great fun, and this year is also really fun, just being able to engage with people, and especially given that I've had all this experience, means I now get to shed it on some other people, and yeah.
Well, you're pretty much an expert now. Yeah. So, and you, Zoe, as well. I think that you're also alumni, and you're also helping the students from your school, and an introduction, because your school hasn't done it before.
No, they haven't, but it's really exciting to see how the program's developing this year,
Yeah.
and redoing what we did last year, which was really good experience.
Do you reckon you're learning more doing it the second time round?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be grilling you both a little bit more about that later on and what you're learning and what you thought you learned last year and what you're learning doing it second time round, because it's interesting because this is now expanding out internationally. We've got all of our students from Mauritius. They got together, I think about 2 weeks ago for a day. 120 students, because Mauritius is a bit smaller than Australia. So they were able to all get together for the day, and they started to bring all of their knowledge together, as we did last year for our conference, and they were able to start to shape their Mauritians plan for the planet. And we heard the other day that some of our science centres around the world are looking to adopt the program as well. We're talking to Palestine recently, which is, let me see, which is really exciting, and the Philippines. So that quite likely next year we will have quite a few other countries. So we're going to be looking for some resident experts to be helping them out. You reckon you're up for that?
Doesn't sound too hard.
Yeah, that's great. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us today. What we're going to be doing for starters, however, is talking a little bit about the actual processes we use, the reasons why we use the approach we take to actually tackle the challenges facing us on the planet. Now, the interesting thing about that is that nobody's ever done this before. So when I was doing my research on my book, what I found is that the approaches we were starting to look at were pretty unique. And that was pretty exciting because we came up with answers that, that nobody else had come up with. And what was absolutely astounding last year is the fantastic job you and every other student around Australia did in actually pulling together the first national SDG plan developed by high school students in the world. And it was using the methodologies that we used that actually helped get there. But as I said, a lot of the students have come back and said, look, we know they work. Did you find that they work? They made things simple. Yeah. So it's really about taking a big problem. Were you a bit overwhelmed when you started out?
Initially, sort of like, save the planet, me, what, who, what?
How about you, Zoe?
Yeah, it was really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was a big job, but...
And it's all about breaking it down into manageable parts, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once you've got this chunk, you're like, oh, I can do this. And then you go to the next chunk, oh, that's not too hard. And then suddenly you've got, oh, where did this come from? I've just helped save the planet, I guess.
Yeah, well, we've got a few more steps to actually save it, but I think we're on a good path. What do you reckon?
Definitely.
Great.
Got this.
Okay, well, look, what I'm going to do is just explain to the other students on the video the key steps that we walked through last year and that we're walking through this year. So everybody's got it clear in their mind as to why. And then what we might do is join you and Bobby to actually talk about how this applies to saving the planet, but also the parallels and the links with the minds of the great scientists on the planet who are actually solving problems as well. So they're all skills that link in directly to that. So what I might get you to do is go over and join Bobby. I'm going to explain to the students just a few of the key steps, and then we can interview Bobby and find out about the mind of the scientist. What do you reckon?
Yep,
Sounds good.
sounds
See you on the
Great.
other side.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, well, what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about the key program tools that you've been using. Now, this is really important because the reason that the Plan for the Planet came together well last year is because we're using a couple of what we call strategic tools. Now, these are the tools that big businesses use to run their businesses, that successful companies, that successful organisations use. And what we're using is those same tools to actually look at how we can address a planet and achieve a planet that is sustainable long term. so that we don't run out of resources by 2050. We don't run out of oil and energy and other things. We don't fill the oceans with plastic. We have cities that are sustainable. We end the issues of poverty, exactly as outlined in our opening video, the SDGs. So the first question that often comes up from students is, why do we focus on the SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Well, as you know, there's 17 of them, and the reason there's 17 is they're pretty comprehensive. They cover all of the issues that we're facing on the planet. So as you've gone through those, what you'll be seeing is they cover everything from poverty to climate change to energy to equality to gender equality to partnership, how we all work together. So we actually cover the global agenda. So that's the first thing. We're covering everything we need to do to make a sustainable planet. The second thing we're doing is we're using the agenda that, in fact, the United Nations has written, so that we know that every country, 193 countries, that's all of them, signed up for the SDGs. So what we're using is the global agenda for sustainability to actually build a plan. Now, the reason that's important is because the SDGs, if we think of that as the agenda for sustainability, the challenge is turning that agenda into action. And that's really what the program is about, the Plan for the Planet. It's a program that helps us take that agenda and turn it into reality in your ecozone, nationally, and now with Mauritius joining the program, hi to everybody in Mauritius, we're able to use that global agenda and apply it locally, nationally, and internationally. So that's the first program tool, an agenda that covers everything we need to do, and it's also accepted by the international community as the way we go. And that's why we use every SDG. We look at every one of them. We don't just pick a couple of them. We look at all of them, and we also look at their interactions, because solving one issue can actually make things better, so that if we solve the issues of energy production in a renewable way, that'll actually help us with things like climate change. But the corollary works as well. If we bring everybody out of poverty but don't address our resources challenge on the planet, we'll run out of resources. So we need to look at how they interact and how we can actually make them work in a coordinated way going forward. The second tools we're learning, we're going to be talking to Dr. Bobby Cerini about STEM skills, really how the mind of the scientist works, all about research, all about finding out the facts. So when you build a plan, it's based on good, solid, well-researched fact. That's what STEM skills are about. The mathematics, the science, applying technology. We live in a very exciting world now where technology is changing everything. And engineering, we're turning the engineering skills into practical applications. So we're looking at all of those aspects when we start to look at solving some of our challenges. The third area I wanted to talk a little bit about is the research we're doing around the program and the evaluation. Why is that important? Well, that's important for two reasons. When you start the program, everybody has to complete a series of surveys. And that tells us how much you know in the beginning. And we've covered 4 areas in our surveys. How much you know about the SDGs in the beginning. How much you've thought about the future and what the future might look like. That's our future scenarios research. Climate change is a major issue, so we've included a survey on that. And then at the end of the program, we get you to repeat all of those surveys and one more. One more where we find out how much you've learnt and also what we can learn from what you've learnt about how to make the program even more effective next year. So that From our feedback last year, we've been able to fine-tune the program, and so we're implementing one of the aspects of the program that you'll be learning, which is continuous improvement. The fourth approach we use is called challenge-based learning. Now that all sounds very technical, but what it simply means is you're thrown the problem. Nobody actually says this is how to solve it. You have to work that out. And that's really important because it gives you the chance to approach it the way you would like to, but it also gives you the chance to actually build your skills on looking at any issue and tackling it and not feeling overwhelmed, because you know there's tools such as the research, the STEM, and the next strategic planning I'm going to talk about that can help you solve any problem. And that gets really interesting when we look at the challenges we're looking at, which is in fact solving the challenges facing the planet. But breaking that down into manageable parts, which is what strategic planning is about, will help you understand that even though the issue looks very large and confronting at the front, as you walk through each stage, suddenly you find there's an answer there. So we'll be talking to Dr. Cerini about that. So the strategic planning is really about skills that take big problems and turn them into solutions. And a lot of those skills are in fact the type of skills that you'll be able to use in all sorts of situations, whether that's business, whether that's government, whatever you choose to make your future career in, these skills will be directly applicable. Now, the final tool that we look at is global citizenship. Now, this is a UNESCO goal, and that's everything from the analytics, understanding how to critically analyse a problem and research that, to globally connected, understanding other cultures, and that's why we're now looking at working together with other countries. We've already got some of our schools mentoring other countries, understanding the different cultures and perspectives and diversity of those cultures, and then also being socially responsible, feeling like the challenges that we're facing on the planet are in fact addressable. And most importantly, that you, even though you might feel like I'm a school student and what can I do, that you can actually take an active part in that. So that's what global citizenship's about. So they're the 6 program tools that sit behind the actual program and why we've approached it the way we have. And then there's 10 strategic planning lessons that you'll probably learn as you go along. And I'll just quickly run through those because we don't really need to spend a lot of time, but just reflect as I go through them about whether you're picking this up already. Understanding the big picture, that's what the SDGs are. It's no good just looking at one issue if another issue is going to make that worse. So the SDGs are how we look at the big picture. Second one, most of the answers are already there, just ask. And this is something I learned in business, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you do the research, you'll find most of the answers are there. The trick is then how to focus those answers, how to prioritize those. And we use a principle called the 80-20 rule, which is you focus on the top 20% and you'll usually find that that addresses the 80% of the issues. We then translate that into the build program, which is strategic planning. What's our vision? What are our objectives, strategies, actions? How do, in fact, these interact? So how do we leverage the interconnectivities, like solving renewable energy and that helping to address issues such as energy and also climate change? Keep it simple. Now, this one isn't one you find very often in the management textbooks, but I can tell you, having worked in management for many years, this is the most important. And I'll give you an example. One of my old bosses, he was the director of our company, we prepared this wonderful presentation 45 slides about how we could merge two parts of the organisation to actually make us an even better company. He came back and said, Ian, he was French, this is a very pretty presentation, but can you give it to me in 4 dot points? And he was right. We could take all of that information and break it down, and that's why we have the 4 key areas we focus on, because he still looked through the 45 slides, but being able to summarise it, it's often called the elevator pitch. That's why we have 1 page per SDG. You'll also be learning about teamwork and continuous improvement. So the reason we get you to load up all of the things you discover onto the website is so other students can learn from you. And finally, we look at the global picture, but we also look at how this applies locally. So they're the principles that the whole program is based on. And what we're going to do now is have a chat to Dr. Bobby Cerini about how some of those principles apply to, facing some of the global scientific challenges. Bobby has in fact interviewed many of the great scientists around the world, one of whom we have on our picture here, Brian Schmidt, who's ANU Vice-Chancellor, who was part of the team who discovered that the universe was actually expanding and won his Nobel Peace Prize for that. So we're pretty excited to have Bobby here to talk to us about that. So I'm going to join Bobby now, and we're going to talk to her about her work, but also we're going to get Zoe and Max to help us explore what Bobby has discovered. We're finally going to finish with Pimlico, who's going to talk us through some of what they've learnt in the program as well. So over to Bobby. Bobby, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here. It's great to be back with the Plan for the Planet team and to see what's been happening since last year as well, because it's a big program covering lots of ground with the SDGs, but lots of really important thinking and talking to be done as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
So you have discovered what the mind of the scientist is.
Have I?
Have you?
Well,
tell us a bit about your research, Bobby,
okay,
first of all.
I was going to say, it's a great question, because I was thinking about Brian Schmidt and how he won the Nobel Prize for Physics. And, there are many different types of scientists. They're not all going to be Nobel Prize winners, partly because you can't win a Nobel Prize for some of the most interesting research there is. You can't win a prize for environmental science, at least not a Nobel Prize. But your work can contribute to a Nobel Prize. And there's, you can win a different type of prize for doing great research in a whole variety of different ways, and they come from lots of different places. One thing I learned about science is it's actually not about the prizes, because although prizes are wonderful and they might bring you money or awards or fame, they don't necessarily make a difference to the person doing the research, because what motivates lots of people in science and research and also in innovation and inventors is, well, why does it work this way? How does it work? What's happening here? And what can I do to understand the processes going on behind the scenes? And can I then apply those processes to another area? And I guess, another thing about Brian Schmidt, like lots of science and research these days, is it's involving lots of people, tens of people, dozens of people, hundreds of people, who are all trying to work towards solving these really complex problems. And so I think we live in a really great time for research. We live in a time where the SDGs have been articulated. There's 17 huge problems to face the world. We've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who can each apply their thinking to different parts of those problems. And they can work together in their own countries, between countries, and they can look at data from the deep past as well as data that we have now, and modelling of what the data might look like in the future. We are so well placed to make real progress towards solving these huge problems. And I think it's great that as a global community we've articulated this plan for the planet going forward. And in particular, you guys are going to be here in 14 years' time. You're going to be leading these research projects. I find that really exciting, that my little bit of research that's looked at the mind of the scientist is just a point in time, and it's going to contribute to the work that you are all going to do together over the next couple of decades. So, you know, it's a really big responsibility, I think.
Yeah, it is somewhat daunting, admittedly, but I mean, yeah, seeing you here, and I can just imagine myself one seat over, it's inspiring, I will say.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because one of my things my research looked at was heroes of science and innovation. You know, who are the people that inspire us? Why do they inspire us? And what has their life journey been like? Because, you know, I think back to when I was 14, 15, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Someone once said to me, a career is what happens when you go around doing interesting things. And I think that's a really good plan for the future. You keep doing the things you're interested in. But my research looked at, you know, well, why are people the way they are? And, you know, we have these problems that are caused by people, unintended consequences of great ideas in the past. You know, plastics are wonderful, but they do create all sorts of other problems for us to solve. And so how do we get to know what makes people stay in a research path as opposed to something else, and what makes them inspiring? And I think it's a couple of things. One was when I looked at, you know, why did someone choose to keep solving problems rather than go off and be a lawyer, let's say, where a lawyer looks at problems of an individual's experience. You know, a research scientist would look at a problem of a mechanical process or a health problem or an environmental problem. It's a totally different sort of type of work. And some of the things that influence them are, well, firstly, all kids ask lots of questions, so asking questions is not particular to scientists or researchers, but who helped them ask questions? You know, when you come home from school and you found a really weird-looking rock or leaf or frog or animal, or you've seen something strange, you know, why did all the birds take off from the trees at once? The questions that you ask, if someone is there to help you answer them from a young age, often that's what helps people pursue a career of answering questions and solving problems. That was just one. There were lots of different things.
Yeah, I was wondering what, if you break it down into the 4 dot points, not necessarily 4, Bobby, but what do you reckon were the couple of key things that you noted were common factors amongst those top scientists?
Okay, I'm going to go for something a little bit controversial, and Max, we were talking about this before. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say luck.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone in this room, take a look at ourselves and say, how lucky am I? Are we lucky?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel lucky. I feel lucky all the time. Why am I lucky? Well, I'm lucky because, you know, my parents weren't university educated, but they helped me to ask questions. They encouraged me to ask questions, so my upbringing was really important. There was enough money to send me to school and for me to be able to afford to buy textbooks. I had lights on at night in the house. We had power to the house. We could read. We had opportunity to see TV. The internet didn't exist back then, but as the internet was invented and came on, by the time I got to uni, I could access the internet, computers, technology, great teachers. I was really lucky. Okay, so there's many, many ways in which I think we would each say, wow, I was really lucky. And so our circumstances are a big thing that work in our favour, and lots of people in the world don't have that. So, but some people I studied had come from really poor backgrounds. They'd come from environments where they didn't have help from their parents, but they might have met just one person, a great teacher, a leader in their community, or someone they felt that they related to through books, a character they read about in a book, like a great surgeon, and somebody saying to themselves, a Nobel laureate, Barry Marshall, said to himself, wow, I could do that, when he read about some wartime surgeons who'd done some really crazy, interesting things. So I'm going to say luck.
And inspiration, it sounds like, and teamwork. They're the 3 things I've picked up already.
Yeah.
What you were saying, a lot of the research has been in teams, and it's been a bit about inspiration.
And opportunity.
Finding something that inspires you and then pursuing that.
Can I have 5, actually?
Okay, you can have 2. Yes. Only, what do you reckon?
I know you said 4.
We'll give you 5?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay.
So, yeah, so all of those things are really important. And one other thing, and it's something that Thomas Edison, do you remember the great inventor? He was one of the people who simultaneously invented the light globe.
Or marketed it.
Yeah, he was very good at that. Anyway, so Thomas Edison had this expression, he called it stick-to-itiveness, which is the ability to persist and to keep doing something that you are going along with. And so there's a personal characteristic or a personal trait there, which is around not giving up when it gets a little bit hard. And, you know, I think when I think about life, I'm 45, I think talking about life, there's lots of times where it seems really hard. Exams, studying, really, it seems really hard. But you've got to keep going, because you're going to get through the hurdle of the exam and you're going to go and move on to the next thing. You might get into an apprenticeship, or you might get a degree, or you might go and work in a business. But you've got to get through the hurdle. And so that ability to persist and to stick to it, stick-to-itiveness, perseverance, it's a personal trait. And you can, if you don't feel like you have that, you can develop it. There's things you can do to practice persisting, which is, I'm just going to read this book for another half an hour. Okay, it starts with something as simple as that. And lots of these people I interviewed have got tricks that they work with for themselves. They develop techniques to help them keep being interested and keep going even though it's hard. Because life is interesting because you get over the hard stuff and then you've got a result.
Yeah, I was also going to ask, just what you're saying for that one point, teamwork. Did you notice any common traits with the scientists that you interviewed as to how they sort of worked in teams, I suppose? Yeah,
that's a good question, Max. I think, yes, there is. And good communication skills is really important because, and good communication is not just about talking, it's about listening. And so, when you are working with other people, there's this saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And a village is always made up of lots of different personality types. Some people are quiet, some people are outgoing, some people are technically really accomplished, good at fixing stuff or good at taking things apart. Other people are really savvy about emotional states and how someone's feeling and why is someone responding the way they are. And you could go on, there's many different types of personalities that it takes to have a successful village, and everyone relies on one another. And in teams, it's a bit similar, where to work together, we have to say, well, I can bring this interest to the problem, but I don't have the whole solution. I'm just one of the team. And there's a couple of things about that. One is, I find that really comforting, and I think it's really important in the context of trying to save the planet. It's not all on your individual shoulders. It's on all of us, a little bit on all of us, and we can each bring something really unique and really powerful to that. And it might be because you're a good observer of what's happening around you. It might be because you're a good listener. It might be because you're a great writer and you're really good at interpreting what people are saying and making a few succinct dot points, the 4 dot points, so that other people can understand. So yeah, great communication skills, really important, and being able to share the space with other people.
A question for Zoe. So I'm going to hold your 5th point just for a moment, if that's okay.
Attention.
So Zoe, you've actually worked with 2 teams now.
Yes.
The Brindabella team, and then now at Radford. And I was wondering 2 things. One is how you found that teamwork working, whether you found that an important part of developing the plan last year and this year, and also whether you've got any questions for Bobby as well. So first one, we'll just start with the teamwork.
Yeah, I found teamwork was really important in the program because sometimes individually we felt unmotivated or like we didn't want to do stuff, but when we got together we just sat down at lunch and we just smashed it out and we could bounce ideas off each other and, I don't know, share our experiences and our different points of view views about all the different SDGs, because that was really valuable, I think, in developing our plan and all our individual forms. And that, again, at Radford is really important, and we've been doing that. We've had a few meetings, and it's been really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so picking up on Bobby's point about motivation and perseverance, in fact, and inspiration, you're getting all of those sort of things through your team.
Yep.
And it's interesting, working in business, teamwork's just emphasised so much. Most people think of business as about competition and everybody competing, but the core is about teamwork, and that's exactly what you found and continue to find.
Yeah.
The other one is, have you got any questions for Bobby?
Yes, I was just wondering, how do you think we can translate those 4 or 5 points that you were talking about into the plan for the planet, and how can we apply those principles?
Okay, so firstly, I do think it always starts with us as individuals. The people we are now at this point in time is not the people we'll be in 10 years' time, because hopefully over the next period of time we'll learn new skills, we'll learn from other people, we'll acquire new learning, and we'll spend time studying and spend time thinking and spend time listening and spend time working together. So, I think you start from where you are right now and you think about where to next, you know, because every decision you make could take you closer to where you want to be. Now, you don't have to know where you will be in 10 years or even where you want to be for sure, but, you know, where do you want to be in 6 months? What is it that you want to do after you've done this week's work? You know, what kind of conversations did you find really interesting that you think you might like to know a little bit more about? I want to share a story from a guy who's a paleontologist, someone who studies dinosaurs and fossils. His name's Mike Archer, and he used to be the head of the Australian Museum in Sydney. And he had this experience where he used to come home from school with dead animals. Right? He would find a dead bird, and he'd bring it home, and he'd say, "Hey, Mum, I want to look what I found. You know, I want to get the skeleton out. How do I do that?" And his mum would say, "Well, we'll get the pot out. We'll put the pot on the stove, and you can boil up the bird." So he was learning. Oh, okay, so I can get the skeleton, even though it's a weird thing to want. You know, not everyone's parents would be that happy, but his were okay with it. And he talked about a series of things that I think really illustrate the question, which was, as an individual, he felt really interested, but he didn't know how to use his interest. It was a bit unshaped with what he would do next with it. But what happened next was he got really interested in skeletons, and then he noticed some of the rocks around him had imprints of skeletons in them, so small animals that he'd found as fossils. And then he sort of said again, well, how do I find out about these? And he saved up his pocket money, bought a book that would help him to describe it. He then went to the museum, got put on a train to the Natural History Museum, and he met someone who could help him describe these fossils he was finding. And so on and so forth through his whole life, even as an adult, and as a researcher, he continually was saying, well, I don't know what to do with this information I've now got. I've just done my work here, but where to next? And it was really in small steps. So I think as a personal journey for people who are in Plan for the Planet right now, you guys, it is, well, how can I be the best person I can be based on where I am right now? What skills would I like to learn? How do I answer the questions I still have? What did I really like about this? What got me excited? What got me interested? Because you can't solve all the world's problems on your own, and you can't solve them all at once, and you can't solve them every day, but you can solve a little piece of it one day at a time, being the best person you can be. That's what I think is the answer.
That's really interesting, Bobby. And I'm just interested to go back to Max and to Zoe and say, look, you've been through the program now through last year, and now you're involved again this year. Do you think that's changed any of your perspectives? I'll start with you, Max, in terms of both how you look at the world and also how you think about your career.
Well, yeah, I sort of am in that one position. I'm not quite decided on where I want to go with my career, but like I was just going to say, just listening to you there, I was like, well, that definitely sounds like it has a lot of merit. I mean, I can see that, yeah, that where to next. I can see that I've sort of applied a little bit of that previously, but I can definitely say it has some merit. And yeah, also with the program, yeah, just seeing all the strategies that people use and like the 80-20 rule, just focus. Being able to break down problems into manageable chunks, I feel like it lets you see those problems for what they actually are, and it's like, well, yes, still a problem, but something you can tackle rather than something which all humans have to put up with but can't do anything about, because, yeah, you see, it stops looking like, I'm going to use some assignments, it stopped looking like an English rationale where you don't really know where to go, what to do, and more like an equation where there's an answer but you just need to work at it to figure it out. Yeah.
So mathematics is your preference?
It's one of them.
So I'm going to go over to Zoe. How about for you, Zoe? Being through the program last year, and I know you introduced it to Radford, do you think that's changed any of your perspectives on the challenges, as Max was saying, of the planet, but also your thoughts about your career?
Yeah, I think it has. I think it's made me more aware, especially as a global citizen, to understand how my impact in Canberra can interlink with the rest of the world and change things in the rest of the world, I guess. And it definitely has opened my eyes to many career paths, and I think I want to look at the Sustainable Development Goals and go into the UN, but I'm not really sure, but that's definitely because of the program. Because before the program, I didn't even know what the Sustainable Development Goals were. And now I'm really interested in climate action, and it's totally shaped my perspective and my ambitions for life, I think.
Look, that's pretty exciting. Thank you so much, Bobby, for joining us today. Max and Zoe, I think we're going to hear at this point, unless there's anything else you wanted to ask Bobby, or anything else you wanted to say, Bobby?
No, only it's great. Well, I just wanted to observe that it's really great and exciting to think about what next for the program, and I'd be really interested to see what happens for you next and where you go. And I really hope that we can keep building this community of you know, really interested and interesting people who are participating, because by working together into the future, we can keep building on the work that's starting right here, right now.
Well, we've got over 700 students now, internationally, both in Australia and Mauritius, and additional countries looking at picking up the program. So it's exactly as you're saying, Bobby, it's expanding.
Yeah.
Now I want to just finish with hearing from some of our students from Pimlico, because Max and Zoe, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. Unfortunately, it's just down the road. Now, Townsville's a little bit further up the road, so we couldn't get the students from there. But they've sent along a video of, again, how they approached it and the program and the lessons they've learned. So we might just look at that, and then we'll look to close up today. But again, thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you.
My SDG was decent work and economic growth. It focused on the economic growth and work in my ecozone. I found a lot of my research online through government reports on different plans that they were putting through in the future, such as 2030 plans and 2050 plans. And a lot of these didn't get put through in action when they were proposed, but they had a lot of information that was pretty good for what I was trying to research and find to improve the economic growth potentially in our ecozone, especially since it was for this whole region. Being part of this program has opened a world of opportunities for us.
We got to travel to New York for the United Nations International School United Nations Conference. Here we got to collaborate with 700 students from across the globe. Being part of this program is a stepping stone in allowing you to become a global citizen.
This is your opportunity to secure your future for your planet.
Well, they're reflecting very much what you were saying right at the end there, Zoe, about becoming a global citizen. Do you feel like a global citizen?
Since I've joined the program, I do.
You look like a global citizen. I noticed you've got your little Young Australians Plan for the Planet badge this time. So have you, Max? You feeling like a global citizen?
Definitely. I mean, seeing how much of an impact one person can have, but also seeing how much of an influence humanity has, and yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, I definitely feel part of the whole workings of everything.
So my final question for you both, do you feel like, so there's a wonderful saying that says you're either part of the problem or you're a part of the solution. Do you think being involved over the last 18 months has helped you feel more part of the problem or part of the solution?
More part of the solution.
I thought so. How about for you, Max?
I was going to say, yeah, I definitely feel part of the solution now, but it kind of made me realise, oh wow, all my habits and stuff. But then, like, those habits obviously extend to everybody, but you're like, wow, we have seriously created some problems. But then I'm like, but yeah, I am the solution. We are the solution. We can do this.
But it's also helped you understand the depth, I guess, and the scope of the challenges we've got. But as we were saying earlier, and as Bobby was saying, that the SDGs have helped us so much because they've framed what we need to tackle. Great. Well, look, thank you very much for your help today. We're going to finish off there, and we're just going to go through the next steps that you need to be taking as students in the 2018 program, and also as alumni students for 2017. So the first one is, as I mentioned earlier, the research which helps us understand what you've learnt, and your feedback on the program is really important. So if you're one of the 2017 alumni students, if you could help us get fill in all the 4 surveys, This month is Student Evaluation Survey Month. Fill in the surveys and that will give us a good perspective on what you learnt, but it'll also help us get some of the funding to go forward so that good research helps get more support for that. So if I could ask everybody to fill in those 4 surveys, get them back, and we've actually got some prizes for schools for the students who complete those. Secondly, for all of the schools in the 2018 program, if you could start focusing on bringing all of your research and build plans together into your regional plan, and this year, as well as the national plan, we've got the state and territory plans covering every state and every territory in the country. And finally, if you tune into next month's program and broadcast, we're going to be focusing on bringing that all together. The engage and communicate phase. So when you take all of that research, all of that hard work, you put it in a format that we can communicate it, and then the most important thing, and we didn't get to go over this with Bobby, but each of those scientists were then able to communicate what they discovered to the rest of the world to make a difference. So next week we'll be focusing on that, bringing it all together and communicating. So look, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Bobby. Bobby over there. Thank you, Zoe. And thank you, Max. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your school and out of your work. And look forward to continuing to work together to tackle the challenges of the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.